folks. Welcome back to the iHealth channel, iHealth Radio, with your host, Hurricane Age. New day, new show, an awesome topic. We've only addressed it once, but not at the caliber of today, because who I have with me today is going to blow our brains up.
I
you know,
hope not.
with knowledge. But really, it's the concept is this is someone who knows our brains and who knows how we function. And there's so many the attributes and or descriptions I would give to our guest today. I mean, he's a brain surgeon, literally. Now, those are not too many of them in the world, and we're going to talk about that. And it takes a lot to be there. He teaches neuroscience at Virginia Tech, and he is an author, and he does a lot of things. And one of the main things that he's addressing, or at least talking about, is medical or doctors burnout. Now, we know that everybody gets burned out through their life and work and so on and so forth. But the last thing we want, folks, is that our health care providers, our doctors, get burned out, because I don't think that the outcome will be a good one for any one of us as patients if that is the case. So today we have with us the specialist that actually is making a difference in this world, and hoping that with his work, a lot of doctors would know how to do better and cope with it better and not have the burnout that they could experience. And we all know that's not an easy, job. So, Dr. Gary Simonds, welcome to the show.
Well, it is absolutely my pleasure to be here, and I'm honored. And thank you so much. And happy holidays.
Happy holidays. That is true. And we're actually towards the latter part of the year. So, New Year, new us is coming up soon. So, well, so Doc, I can never do justice, introducing someone. You please do us the pleasure of, introducing who Gary Simonds, because you have a lot more to offer than what I just, described in this brief, intro.
Yeah, well, as we were talking about before we started, I hail from New Jersey originally, but haven't been there for a while. I actually did go to med school though at Rutgers, down in New Brunswick. And from there, I went to a what's called a residency. That's where you learn your specialty. In neurosurgery, the residency is 7 years long, and back in those days, at least, it was about 100 to 110 hours a week in the hospital, and about every third night with no sleep. So it was pretty grueling. I'm not sure how much of that was needed or necessary, but it does take a long time to kind of build the skills. And I served in the Army for a while, and I eventually went out originally to Geisinger in Pennsylvania, the Geisinger system in Pennsylvania, and then dropped down to Virginia, what's now Virginia Tech, Carilion School of Medicine, and did a lot there. I stopped operating a couple of years ago for some medical reasons, but I still teach at Virginia Tech, both undergrads and medical students, mostly about neuroscience in general.
Well, that's a big, I would say specialty. I mean, brain surgery, neuroscience, that's very important. It's everything is important in our body, right? But it is not an easy, piece of work. I mean, there's a lot more that takes place. And I know what you said, that you went to school. 100 hours is a lot of hours to put in 100 or more. And yes, talking about burnout, I'm sure that is burnout at school at that point. That's before even practicing. But so if you don't mind, doctor, just for our audiences, can you break down what does a brain surgeon do other than surgery in the brain? In more like advanced way or simplified way, I would say, as well as neuroscience itself. Like what is that? Just to bring it clear to our audiences.
Yeah, sure. Excuse me. There are many diseases and injuries that can affect the nervous system. That is the brain, the spinal cord, and the nerves, even, all the way out into your arms and legs. And there are many different diseases that can affect it. And, there's a big kind of a dividing line between two specialties in medicine. One is neurosurgery and one is neurology, and they're not exactly the same thing, although we often kind of interdigitate. But neurosurgery deals with what I would call structural problems, meaning they can be seen with the naked eye or not a very powerful microscope, and they are causing problems because of them being there or pressing on things or invading things, and they're diseases of which we can physically do something about, meaning with our hands or using instruments or that sort of thing. So you think of something like a brain tumor growing in the brain, we hopefully can take it out. It may need a bunch of other treatments as well, but we physically go into the head and take it out. Or a big collection of blood from a hemorrhage, we may go after something like that. And then there's a whole bunch of things that we can do in the brain and spinal cord, but they're for things that are you can virtually see them, and we can manipulate them. Whereas there's a bunch of diseases that are much more on the microscopic level, like within the cell. So multiple sclerosis, for example, is a disease where your immune system attacks the insulation of individual super microscopic nerves. And, there's nothing a surgeon can do with their hands for that. So the treatments are medications, and those type of diseases tend to fall more under the purview of neurologists who will treat it with medications and that sort of thing. Now, again, our two specialties very much interact, and we're always working kind of side by side. But that's kind of how I break it down. So as a neurosurgeon, you spend a lot of time in the operating room because particularly brain surgery is pretty delicate, obviously, and you can mess things up pretty easily. So you don't want to rush through anything. And the operations can take several hours to a whole day if it's super complicated. And so you spend a lot of time in the operating room, and then you tend to spend a lot of time in places like the ICUs and the ERs, because a lot of our diseases, the people are really sick and in big trouble, and they often come on fairly quickly. So if you have a hemorrhage in your brain, for example, you may need to be operated on within minutes or hours, or else all sorts of terrible things can happen. So we spend a lot of time kind of dealing with emergencies or very urgent problems, and our patients tend to be very sick. So we spend, like I said, if we're not in the OR, we're usually in the ER or the ICUs a lot of the time.
Wow. Well, first of all, Doug, thank you for breaking, the differences, because I think that clarified, at least for me, and I'm sure for people that watch and listen right now. But it's amazing because you're talking about it, but it's serious stuff, and it's to your point, delicate stuff that is one mistake can mean life or death for that person, or paralysis, or something very bad, as you stated. And you're right. I mean, these things don't warrant in the longer, maybe like a tumor, maybe somebody that can discover it early, but a lot of these things can happen instant. They get rushed to the ER, and that's it. From ER to OR to ICU. I mean, that's probably the standard procedure, right? How it's going to
Exactly.
go. And all that, those are all tense, places. I mean, it's trauma 1-on-1, and it's
Mhm.
and you're right. I mean, going into an operating room for what you do is going to be it's going to take time, and you want to do it, with the best potential outcome. So listen, I mean, I gotta thank you and salute you for for the work, because that is not for the faint of heart, as they say. And that leads to that one question is, why brain surgery out of all the specialties?
Well, I have my own story about that one. I think different people are motivated by different things, but I was going to be something completely different. I was going to be a cardiothoracic surgeon, and I actually had my training all lined up. And in my last month in medical school, I saw my first brain operation, and I was just like, oh my God, I have got to do that. And it, wasn't well thought out. It wasn't well planned out. It was like the scales fell from my eyes, and I was like, I have to do that. It wasn't very wise in that, I had no idea what I was getting myself into, but it worked out very well because I loved every minute of it. Um, but I always advise, like the medical students, I say, I go ahead and follow your heart like I did, but do a lot more research than I did before switch horses in midstream. So it was just for me, it was just like almost like an epiphany. I thought it was super cool. I thought it was, super challenging, and it proved to be certainly both of those.
Well, thank you. Well, so Gary, we watch movies, we like Grey Anatomy and all the these series and stuff. There's a lot of hospital and surgeons. Now, do you go through the same surgeon process until a certain point, and then you decide which type of surgery you go? That's what I'm getting from what you've mentioned. So basically, you get the same training as a general surgeon, and then you get to pick, whatever that is, that extra piece.
Yeah, and I mean, you have to take the medical shows with a big grain of salt. First of all, there's
I
a lot
purposely
less
do that.
sex. But they tend to overgeneralize what everybody can do, So you'll see an ER doc performing heart surgery or something, and it doesn't quite work out that way. But what happens is usually in the third year, the first 2 years of medical school, you get pounded with what we call basic science, so anatomy, physiology, neuropathology, I mean pathology, physiology, pathophysiology, pharmacology. I mean, you just get pounded
A lot of
with
lodges.
all these subjects. And then usually in the third year, you start going out and spending time in the hospital in various specialties, but they tend to be very general at first. So, general medicine, general surgery, OB-GYN, that sort of thing that you'll spend many months in. And you start to get a taste of seeing the various subspecialties out of those. But then in your fourth year, you hopefully are starting to make up your mind and deciding where to go. But something like neurosurgery, you really don't do much general surgery. You go straight into neurosurgery and start working on the brain and the spinal cord right away.
I mean, again, once again, you picked some very crucial ones, some very tough ones, and vital, parts of our daily living. I mean, any individual with any major problem in the brain or the spinal cord or spinal system, you're gonna have issues, right? Mobility, speech, vision, everything. I mean, you lose everything. I mean, that's where the engine is. you know,
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it's everything when you come to think of it. And you were asking about, the neuroscience, and kind of we try to learn the neuroscience back to front because, it's where it's all at. So you kind of want to know your organ system, like the back of your hand, and hopefully can understand it better when things go wrong. But yeah, when things go wrong in the nervous system, I mean, they really go wrong, and it really can, mess people up or kill them pretty easily and pretty quickly.
but I do believe that your work does help people sometimes to save lives and get them better, and sometimes at least to alleviate some of the damage that can happen. I mean, your work is definitely there and needed because these problems will happen. They happen. I mean, there's trauma every day. People, accidents and so on. So you talked about the army. I mean, people, we have veterans that, first of all, thank you for your service. Folks that go and serve, and there's all kind of problems that can happen, and then they still have to get treated. So these are areas that are very, I mean, it's really essential, stuff of living, and the work you do must have a good satisfaction, I would say, level when you operate on someone and you see them improve. I mean, or save their life for that matter. Because to your point, I mean, there's a brain hemorrhage and piece, and you're fixing that. You stop the bleeding. You make sure that the brain's functioning correctly. Or at least it could have been worse because that damage could be irreversible, and sometimes you're able to catch it early on that the damage is not that extensive. So, wow. Now, Doctor Gary, you know, if I just I'm curious, how many surgeries have you operated on that you can think of?
I kept a rough count through the years, and it was over 13,000. And you see, for every surgery you do, you see or take care of 10 or 20 people. So, the amount of people I took care of through the years were, tens and tens of thousands. But you're right. I mean, it's super rewarding. It's super challenging. It's not for, as you said too, it's not for the faint of heart because of the organ system is very unforgiving, that there are a lot of bad outcomes. A lot of people do not do well. So when there are successes, when you can pull somebody from the brink, it really is super rewarding. It's rewarding with all the patients you take care of, but obviously when you can save somebody or save some of their function or whatever, it really drives you. It really fills you with a lot of energy and drive and want to do better. But it's interesting. It it is in our setting, it's really busy. If you look at the number of people in the country who actually need a neurosurgeon, it's relatively small, but we're concentrated in these big medical centers, right? And so if you ever are around or near a big medical center, you see these helicopters flying in all the time. I mean, they're just coming in every few minutes. Helicopters coming in, and it feels like, at least to us, it feels like every single one's bringing a neurosurgical problem. But for example, car accidents, I always worked in these trauma centers, and so the car accidents are coming in one after another, and people very badly beat up. And you go at it as a team. There's a trauma team and the orthopedic surgeons and all, a whole bunch of other people, and we take care of anything that goes on, obviously, in the brain and the spine. But when they get badly beaten up, I mean, everything else has to take second seat, because you only have a few minutes sometimes to act on a problem.
Well, I think if you can get the brain, or the actual nervous system, or the neuro system stuff operational, then you can work with the bones and everything else.
Right,
I mean, it's
right,
it's that's the whole thing. If that ends, it's over, right? I mean, the cardio stops, everything else is dead. So
exactly.
I mean, we often hear the expression like, "Well, this is not brain surgery." In this case, it is brain surgery. It is at the worst or the highest level that you could possibly imagine at any given moment. So there is no dull moment for you guys. And so and I did read that there's not a lot of you guys. I mean, it's a high, specialty, and very few out there. So there is a high demand. So I'm sure you are busy, as you said. Whatever you are, if you're in a hospital system, that system is going to get everything that's in that particular vicinity or state area, because that's just what it is. And so again, that makes you one of the few in this world that actually can do these things. And I have to, again, it's just, that's why I said I'm fascinated today, because this is, you don't get to talk to someone that has a specialty in the world that is that minute in terms of the general, I guess, population of this earth, right? There's a lot of us. There's only a few of you. So um,
Yeah, it's funny, Hurricane, though, but I think we benefit a little bit from the organ that we work on, it being the brain, and the brain being so amazing and wonderful and complex and all that. I think people just immediately assume, oh, somebody who works on it must be really special too. So we get put up there with the rocket scientists and astrophysicists. I'm not sure we earn that, but it is pretty wild. It's a wild ride.
yeah, I beg to differ, because those guys that send those things up there, they need a better brain and a good brain. And God forbid something happens, you got to be there, right? So we don't want that, right? It is. I mean, your work is. I would say it's up there, because anyone listening right now, the last thing you want is to have something happen in your functions and anything. So, again, just thank you, and for the work you've done. I know you don't do it now specifically, but you've saved lives. Now, I'm pretty sure, and this is probably the question that you dread the most, is you probably have lost people to trauma, and I'm sure that is not an easy thing, but it's something that you probably train for, to be able to, I guess, to deal with emotionally, physically, and with the I guess the family members. Um, that how hard is that? I mean, I know it's hard, but just from your experience, how do you, just maybe as an advice to doctors or wannabe doctors, like the ones that are planning to go into the medicine level and maybe go to that. When I meant wannabe, not in a negative way, I mean, like people that have an actual longing to do this job, what would you tell them?
Yeah, I think in a field like ours, it is part and parcel. You're going to deal with it, and it actually gets worse because, well, first of all, we deal with just a lot of bad things, bad outcomes that we just can't fix. So, a bad gunshot wound to the brain, we may rush off to the operating room and try to save, but the odds are really stacked against us, and they're probably not going to survive. And sometimes, right in the middle of the operation, we know that they are not going to make it, and it's that's not easy even under those circumstances. But we're human beings too, and we will make mistakes. I hope it's not like, usually it's not like the movies where I drop an instrument on the brain or something and say oops. But we will make mistakes, we'll make judgment errors, we'll make the wrong call. Maybe we wait too long on a problem, or maybe we assume that one thing's going on, another thing's is actually doing it. But one way or the other, we make mistakes, and the consequences are rough. So you get kind of a two-tiered beating, if you will. On one level, it's you're dealing with a lot of diseases that you're not going to make better, or you're only going to marginally improve anyway, just in and of themselves. But if you then throw in, human fallibility, our ability to make mistakes here and there, you carry with you that weight of I've hurt people, I've hurt people and hurt people badly, and people have died maybe because I haven't been as good as I should be or could be. And you begin to overgeneralize that too, to almost every case, every bad outcome. You're constantly going, what could I have done different? What could I have done differently? And you'll wake up in the middle of the night, sometimes in a cold sweat, and you'll think, gone it, why didn't I think of this? Why didn't I think of that? And it may not be valid at all, but you do it anyway. So you just pretty much assume that you could have done better, even under the worst of circumstances. So somehow you've got to be able to bear that. You got to be able to tolerate that, and go in the next day and do your thing. And because again, they don't wait for you. They don't say, hey, Simonds is having a rough time right now, we'll just let him have a week or two off. It's you come in and the next set of crises are waiting for you. So on one level, you just you have to kind of Nike it. You just have to do it. Just do it. But I think there are many ways to hopefully tackle it. I think one of the biggest is commiseration. Is if you've got good partners, people that you trust, people that you're working with, where you can talk this out and say, doggone it, I wish I had done this, or can you think of something I could have done better? Or when they're having a rough time, you're going, I know exactly what you're going through. Sorry that you're going through it. It's amazing how reparative that is when you have that sort of situation.
Well, thank you, Gary. And listen to you. I mean, great advice, in terms of like people have to be prepared, and certainly any medicine, any
Yeah.
school level, you're gonna have to be prepared because you're gonna see a lot of trauma and things during the career path, and you have to deal with it. You're gonna see disease. You're gonna have people that may not make it. You're gonna give diagnoses that can be terminal and things like that. In your case, you have minutes, and really, it's just difficult. And I have to say that, we talk about the brain, and, there's the other part, the mental aspect of things, right? And, we typically, in general terms, we talk about mental status and health status or body, physical status. In this case, yes, you guys fixing brains, but mentally, you can be very, very burned out, as we're going to lead into the discussion, because it does take, a nice toll on people, like to your point, just it's like a guilt factor, even though you have none, but you don't know had you done something different, and you would never know because you do your best at the same. By the way, this is actually for everything else out there. If you're doing
Yeah.
any type of specialty, you can only do the best at the time you have with the set of circumstances and everything else. There's many times to your point, and anybody watching probably had this experience. You move on and you do something like, oh man, I should have thought about that. But at the time it didn't happen. There's no way you could have thought about it because everything that happened the way it did, and you could not possibly change the outcome at that point. And thinking about it retroactively and just, maybe it's good for the future. Like, okay, next time we're gonna try this, as another option.
Hmm.
But that doesn't help whoever, has been, on that situation with you, and you're right. It is a mind game, and it's a very difficult one. And I guarantee it. I mean, I'm sure that's what we're going to go into now. Is that actually takes a big toll on the doctors that do these types of high, specialized functions. I would say even the non-specialists, but in your case, it's very more trauma based and a lot more of you seeing lives. I mean, the lives of these people are in your hands. I mean, 100%. I mean, in a way, that's what it is. That's what you think. That's what you know. That's what the expectation is for you. And parents, family members, you name it, they're gonna be there, and that's the first reaction. Like, you know, listen, this is a true story, and it's a little off, but I'm in the insurance space. So one time we were actually at doing a presentation, and this lady came and was like, "You killed my husband." Now she did not point at us. The company I worked for, she was upset with me.
Right.
And the company was an insurer with a medical practice or medical center. The medical center somehow there was some procedure that they did not perform or they did not allow her to have, for her husband, and eventually he turned out, he passed on. And so her main claim was like, this whole company, is behind, the death of her husband. So I can relate to the fact this is more of a lighter space, but in your case, you were the one literally performing, and so therefore, you and your team, of course. And I love what you said about the team because you're right. I mean, you're not the only one in that surgery. You have, you guys are a whole bunch of people, and there's so much stuff going on, and everybody's looking at different things. And you're right. You have different sets of eyes looking. So your transaction, whatever you do, I mean, you do have advice. You do have other people that have similar or close enough expertise to we're going to do this. So it kind of makes a little bit sense. So at least you have that relief that, we were a whole bunch of us. It wasn't just me, but ultimately you're the one making the
Hmm.
ultimate cuts and all the moves. So you still are the leader of the team in that case, and therefore you always, as a true captain, right? You always, put the blame first as a leader. That's where you stand, right? And so I appreciate it, but I know it's very difficult, Doc. So Gary, now let's talk about we kind of covered all this, but really, you saw that there is a huge area here whereby people are burned out. I mean, you just from the student level to the actual practice level, there is no rest really, because as you said, it's ongoing, it's ongoing. And I love what you said. There's not like, okay, let's give him a week, his mental state. This is not, like you said, this is not the movies where they tell you to take a break. There's only a few of you in a nation, and you're going to be live at all times. There's maybe one replacement, but that's going to be a difficult task. And you're right. The amount of trauma we have these days is just unstoppable. I mean, we live in a motorized world. We live in a very lot of crime, and so therefore these things are like more redundant than maybe some places where it's very secure. I mean, people still fall. People still have things that can happen to them, but not in a general term as we have a higher risk, and so therefore that is an area. I mean, again, you could slip and fall and hit your head, and have blood trauma, and you have
It's crazy. It's
it's as simple
crazy.
as that. As a matter of fact, I read, Doctor, recently that there is a huge number of people that die from just falling from the stairs, with hits to their brains,
Yeah.
to their heads. So imagine that. I mean, you don't even think about that in the picture of what you guys do, but it is the same. For you, it's the same. Someone's coming in, head to the trauma head, and then you're going to have to take care of them. So it's tough. So let's talk, about the amount of pressure and how, you've discovered this, you've seen this, and you took it upon yourself to start, these types of where you wrote books and trainings and things like that. So let's talk about that transition.
Yeah, I think the one thing I'm going to say right off the bat is it is certainly not a entity. Burnout is not an entity that's just in neurosurgeons, and certainly not just in medicine. I mean, I think as you're pointing out, we're a pretty complex society with things going on all the time, and we're multitasking every minute, and there's just and the news feeds are coming in and all that sort of thing, and I think everybody is stressed, and just are running out of energy, if you will. But I obviously I focused more in the medical realm and what I know. And for example, in our books, we went through, we just pulled up, I don't know, 60, 70 plus typical stressors that you encounter in your day-to-day stuff. And all of these are coming in at once, and it has effects. And we like to, to a certain degree, you have to play doctor. You almost have to pretend you're a doctor too in your day-to-day work. You can't sit there and fret and say, geez, this next operation, I can really harm this person. I'm going to be nervous about it. That's only going to get you in trouble. So you got to kind of shut all that talk off, and you almost have to, play the TV doctor. Oh yes, I know what I'm doing, and I'll take care of everything. But it's that all that stuff is still getting in. You put up these big defenses, but it's still getting in. All these various stressors that you face in day to day. And burnout, when you talk about burnout, you can get very specific about it. It's, supposed to be a real drop in emotional energy, just a overall fatigue and a lack of empathy and a sense of nihilism, and you can measure it and all that sort of thing. But we saw it in a number of different ways from the classical sense. And I think when people start really burning out, what happens is personal idiosyncrasies start showing up. So I give the example, I'm from New Jersey originally, and I always say, if you're from New Jersey, you speak in sarcasm, and you're just cynical to begin with. And I had to learn how to suppress all that, particularly going into the South, I think, where they're much more polite. But in my own personal, when I'm starting to burn down, all that stuff comes out. I just get more and more sarcastic, and people take it badly. And now I'm spreading misery around me and stuff. Other people may be angry and barking. Other people may go silent. Other people may take it out on their dog or their spouse or something like that. So everybody's reacting differently. But what we see is, people start becoming the people they don't want to be. And I think that's a good measure when you can start telling somebody's burning out, is when you're looking at them and going, this isn't who they are or who they would want to be.
Well, thank you. Well, so there's fact. I mean, you talked about stressors that you've noticed, and you've discovered a few of them. So there's quite a bit. Now, are there so there's the mental stressors, right? The things that just the pressures, but there's also, I guess, for example, lack of sleep could be one. Nutrition could be
Absolutely.
another one. So let's talk about that. Like, what can we do? As for the our providers, our healthcare, providers. By the way, I think for example, we just experienced a massive example throughout the pandemic, a couple of
Oh
years
yeah.
back. I mean, you guys were the top, the first ones on the line, in there, inside out. I mean, again, I'm not sure I'm sure you were there, but in terms of like the day in, day out, I mean, people were every day, elective, surgeries were not there, but, trauma did not go away. Well, maybe it did because we had less traffic, but,
It
but
did go down, that's for
it
sure.
did go down, but the fact of the matter is, we've seen people working nonstop. In the hospitals, people were not able. A lot of people were sick, so doctors themselves were sick. Sometimes they couldn't be there. So there's a lot of that happen. It's bad. So let's talk about like the different elements that are contributing in addition to the work piece itself. Because the work piece we got it, but there's outside factors. It could be family. Because if you're spending too much time at the hospital doing all this, you are not really spending a lot of time with your family. So I'm sure that affects your relationship with your spouse or significant other, your kids, whatever. That's one. It could be, to your point, you mentioned sarcastic, stuff. You could be just, on a tangent, and literally on edge every minute. So someone talks to you, like you just get in their face. It could be a lot of things, and these things. Now, again, you will probably have lack of sleep, and that's another thing that's going to affect you. You're not hydrated properly. You're not eating well because you ate junk. So tell us, I mean, I'm just assuming these things, but I will relate to you in terms of like, please feed us more on what are those things and how we can potentially prevent that end.
Yeah, I mean, you are hitting on some really solid balls there. I think, you know, one of the things that we forget to do when we're really busy is to take care of ourselves physically, for sure. So, we stop exercising. We, as you said, the quickest food is the junk food. So we throw down some junk food. We're tired, so we're drinking a lot of caffeine. So now our blood sugars are way down. So we're throwing even more, junk in, and we, as you say, even we dehydrate for sure. We're not drinking enough water. Maybe when we get home, we drink a little too much alcohol, and that's wearing on us, by the next day, and so forth. And then uh, and lack of sleep, and it doesn't have to be because you're on call for an emergency room. A lot of us in our society start compromising our sleep because the days are just too short. So, we haven't got everything done that we need to get done, a bank statement or whatever it is. And so we say, oh, I can deal with 5.5 hours of sleep. Well, most people can't. And that sort of thing. So, one of the first things to do absolutely is to take care of ourselves physically. And then, you were commenting, and it's really critical to realize that absolutely our at work life and our at home life, or our out of work life, are absolutely interconnected. They're not separate entities. So if you're burning out one, you're going to burn out in the other, and vice versa. So, if the marriage is going poorly, it's going to affect work. If work is going poorly, it's going to affect, you know, possibly the marriage or your relationship with your kids, or not seeing your friends or family anymore, or that sort of thing. So they're all like ripples in a pond. And in modern society, for example, one of the biggest worries right now that you hear over and over again is work-life balance. People are always talking about work-life balance, that they feel this pressure that, hey, if I'm giving time to work, I'm taking it away from home. And one of the things that we advocate, there's even a little exercise to this, but I think it's a good one. One of the things that we advocate is to never measure your success in balance by time. If you measure it by time, you're going to be frustrated and angry, and it's just going to compound things, because work gets a big chunk of our time, no matter what, we do. So what we advocate for people is to sit down periodically, write out 5 to 8 things that are really important to them in life right now. And they can be work things as well as home things. But what are some elements of your life that are really important to you? It may be staying in touch with your family. It may be, staying in good physical shape. It may be getting a promotion at work. But things that right now are really important to you. And then we ask people to just plot it out almost on a bar graph, where you plot out, you make a bar for each of these entities, and you just measure by an estimate, a guesstimate. How well am I doing in this? How engaged am I? And if you make it into a bar graph, I don't know, I could even draw it out, but if you make it out into a bar graph and you just spitball it, what you begin to see is that you're doing great in certain areas, and then in certain areas you're really lacking. And it really has nothing to do really with time. You may have the time, so you may have a bar graph like that for each of your things. And this may be doing things with your kids, and you realize, yeah, I spend 3 hours a night with my kids, but what I do is I crash on the couch And, we just all sit there and watch TV. And you can say to yourself, okay, uh, what I'm going to start doing is getting outside and we're going to kick a ball around or throw a ball around or go ride bikes or go rollerblade or something like that. And so if you can kind of focus on your engagement with these things as opposed to, oh, I gave this much time, I gave this that much time, because that's just going to frustrate the hell out of you. And then figure out, how do I increase my engagement in these things? That would be an example of how you might tackle a problem like that.
So that's an awesome strategy. But are there others that you might recommend? For example, I don't know, music, meditation, things that you can adopt to just kind of mellow you down and get you into the Zen moment or the zone.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And what we found, working with various physicians and all on this, is what works for Peter doesn't necessarily work for Paul. So like our books have 70, 80 different strategies, that you could
Ooh.
try, different techniques that you could try. And they're all simple. One of the critiques of us is that they're all simple solutions. They're so simple. You just, you're advising to do this and that. And, it's common sense. It's something, and we're like, yeah, if it were truly common sense, people would be doing it. But what they're not doing these things. And, if we made it super psychobabble, really got into psychology, most people would just say, the hell with that. So I'll give you a few examples, but one of the big ones, really starting from scratch, I'm going to start from scratch. One of the biggest ones is what we call self-compassion. And that means actually taking into account yourself, sitting down periodically and thinking, who am I? What drives me? What do I want in life? What do I need in life? What brings me up? What brings me down? What sucks the life right out of me? What makes me feel great and on top of the world? Because we get so involved with taking care of everything else. And this was easy in medicine because you get so focused on the patient. You actually feel guilty if you start thinking of yourself at all. But as you've said, if you're dragging as a physician, what good are you, to your patients? So one of the first things we say is you've got to know yourself and you've got to figure out what are the things that are really going to get you back into the game, make you feel good and stuff. And then step two is what we call self-care. And that is simply, it doesn't matter if you recognize it, if you don't do anything about it, then you're still not going to, make a step in the right direction. So one of the things is to address the things that are really bringing you down. Can I minimize them, or can I change the way I react to them? Because a lot of times we're not going to get rid of the stressors. They're going to be there. There may be a painful, coworker that just drives you insane. Well, you could sit there and ruminate about the coworker all day, or you could figure how to roll over it and just say, okay, I'm not going to let that, get to me. So to be able to do something and address, your weak spots and try to get more of the good stuff in. Another big one that I love is this one, is what we call harvesting uplifts. And that is, and again, I'll give you a medical example, but in medicine, in my business particularly, we spent all our time waiting for the next boot to drop. We just, we were constantly thinking, what could go wrong? What could go wrong? What could go wrong? So like if an operation goes great, we're not high-fiving. We're going, oh God, what's gonna, well, if this happens, this happens, this happens. And that's our job. We're supposed to anticipate so that we can head it off at the pass, hopefully. But what happens is you train your mind to think only negative, to think only bad. So one of the exercises that we promote is to for a good 1, 2, 3 weeks, every day, go in with a piece of paper, go in with your phone, and seek out, search out, or try to recognize just 5 things that went well, 5 things that put a smile on your face or made you feel happy or gave you the warm and tinglies. It could be somebody smiling at you, thanking you. It could be music that came on the radio on your way in. It doesn't matter. Just five things that made the day that much better. And when you go to bed at night, just before you go to sleep, just kind of roll through them and say, well, this wasn't such a bad day. And what happens is if you do that, if you force it for a couple of weeks or so, what happens is you train your brain to actually start seeing these things as they're occurring. You don't have to look for them anymore. You go, oh, geez, that person thanked me. That feels good. I'm going to enjoy that gratitude. And so you've trained your brain to start pulling in the positives, and you're going to feel better for it. And it's this one's got pretty strong psychological background to it, in terms of studies and all that sort of thing. So that would be a great example of an exercise everybody can do.
Well, thank you. Well, first of all, you said something. The critics say that your stuff is simple. Simple works, as believe it or not. The thing, it's so simple that many people don't even look at it. That's really sometimes where the problem is. There are obvious things that are around us every day, but we tend to not to overlook them because we don't even see them. They're that simple. But yeah, they're the foundations to be better or do things differently. And basically you go back to the basics. Basics work. And I think
Exactly.
what you're doing is like people are so advanced. And that's all of us, I think, in general, what we do, especially whatever we do in our lives as businesses, work and stuff. We get so advanced in whatever we do that we forget like the roots, where it all started and what we can do to go back to things. Sometimes you look at, oh, I could have just done it this way. I can do this, I can do the other. But so if critics say that, I mean, it's hitting a button. That's all I have to say. They see it, and sometimes that's what it is. You don't want to accept simple, like, really, that was that easy, and yet we can think about it. Well, sometimes, folks, that's what it is. It is what it is. You
Yeah,
want to
and
say something? Yeah.
no, no, I was going to joke that I think sometimes people who get that cynical are showing their own burnout, to a
Go.
to a
That's
certain
right.
degree. I'll give you another one that I think, again, the criticism might be that, oh, you're just being a Pollyanna, but it's one of the problems that we recognize in the healthcare system, and I guarantee this goes for all industries, is a lot of the stressors are coming at you from a zone which you have no control over. You can, it's corporation and rules and regulations, and
Mhm.
these are stuff you ain't going to change today. You're not going to make it better today, no matter what you do. So we espouse this, what we call the 90-10 rule, and that is, okay, go ahead and assume that 90% of the problem, 90% of what's getting at you is totally out of your control. It's them. They're doing it to you. Is there a 10% or any fraction you want, but is there a percent that you could take some ownership in and say, well, I'm going to make this one little corner that much better? And the effects of doing that, because at one point you're just being a victim, and you're being passive, as opposed to being active and saying, I'm going to affect a change here that is going to make me feel better. And it will then potentially act as ripples in a pond, and help those around you as well. So again, it sounds simple, it sounds like being a Pollyanna, but it's the type of thing that can really make an impact.
Well, you know, I'm listening to you, and I love what you said. It's about ownership, accountability, and we all are supposed to do. And again, for someone who's not in the healthcare, maybe they don't know the intricate stuff that is behind the scenes. But frankly, it's a very reason we started. I started this whole network with the idea that people don't know enough about our healthcare system, and so let's bring it up to the surface. Being in the insurance space and working as a payer, working
Yeah.
with providers, I've seen things that people don't even know what it looks like in there, and and it's you'll be surprised. You're right. I mean, you work in the hospital system. there's a board, there is an executive team, there's decisions, there is investors, there is regulators, the Department of Health, there's the CDC, there's all kind of things that are being thrown at you. There's the media, there's the malpractice lawsuits that, the first thing that they're worried about. I mean, talking about you, I don't know, man. I mean, brain surgery has got to be one of the highest risk, and uh, you know,
Yep.
hospitals will be very, very, highly looking at those things. So these are things that are obviously, but it's what the risk is by doing the work you do. And by the way, that goes for everyone. No matter what you
Yeah.
do in life, what the high risks are and what the effects are, and you deal with them. But finding that balance where you can actually have some resilience and things like that is a key. And you are providing solutions. And I think your books, and by the way, I think you have three books, right? Is that, if I'm not mistaken?
Three nonfiction and a novel that came out this year.
Oh, so I want to talk more about the novels, but all these books, are available to the world of medicine, but I think they're applicable to other areas, so someone can still read them, and one, we can understand what you guys go through. Two, they can apply some of these concepts. I don't think these are exclusive to medicine and the
No.
doctors. They can apply to real life, as motivation, inspiration, and just guidance, to have a better life, to have a better strategy about dealing with high, I guess, intense situations and stressful situations. Psychologically speaking, as you said, these things are found in psychology, and they have based, I guess, uh, sources. So therefore, it's not like it's just out of the air, and therefore we can use them across, other areas. So again, folks, I will encourage everyone to potentially look at these books, and taking a look at them. If not, give them to someone you love, and if you think someone in your world loves medicine, maybe that'll be the first book. Here's a gift of going to med school. Here's a gift. This is
Yeah,
what
and
to
we always
expect.
say, give it to the families as well, because, the families are in for that ride.
Well, that's the thing. See, everything that we do, we always think that it's only us. It's not only us. It's everybody that you touch in life. Whether
Exactly.
in your case, it's your patients, it's their family, it's your family, it's all your environment, your coworkers. That's your world. And that goes to everybody else watching and listening right now. It doesn't matter what you do, your actions or your outcomes, your reactions are affecting everyone. Sometimes not even the people you know. You live in a world where you actually
Yeah.
exchange, information with people. You go to a store, you go to a doctor yourself, you go to, I don't know, to in transportation, you go on a cruise, you go on a plane. You're gonna have to deal with other people. You're stressed. You're gonna be, and we see it on road rage. We see it in people getting in each other's throat, in stores and shopping and stuff, because everybody's carrying loads and loads of emotions. The first emotion, trigger, boom, they just go off, and it's amazing. But so I love what your assessment, obviously started from the world where you are, but it is beyond all of that, and it can benefit anyone. To your point, the families are first. That's the other thing. The families sometimes may not know what you go through, and by
Oh, yeah.
understanding what's going on behind the scenes, because there's so much that's going on. I'm sure you don't tell your family everything that goes on.
No.
There's no way, it's just too much. And you don't want to tell everything. I mean, again, for me, I come from work. I have too many things. So you think my wife's going to know everything that went during the day? No, just sometimes the highlight, like, oh, it's a good day, it's a bad day, whatever. But you don't go through the deep depth, and when you go there, it's like, forget about it. We can spend hours just talking about it, right? But you're right. Earlier, you said talk about it. That's good.
Yeah, Hurricane, that's a really important point about your family. And again, it's not just medicine. I could have called the books "Do as They Say, Not as I Did" because I brought nothing home, and that's a problem in and of itself. What we tend to like to see is that you periodically do talk about some of the stressors of your life away from your home with your family, but in a way that's moves it in a positive direction. So if you come home and you get into a he said, then I said, then he said, then I said, then he said, then it's just a bitch session, right? As opposed to I got into this bad, interaction with one of my coworkers, and this is how I reacted. And I wish I could react a different way. And you start thinking about, well, how do I handle that? Is there a different way to handle it? Is there a better way to handle it? And that's very useful to kind of debrief those stressors. Another thing that you were alluding to earlier, which I think is really important, and it's another good exercise, is we all, particularly in a marriage, I find, but we all always assume we know what the other person is thinking when they do something. If my wife does something, or my she does something or says something, I immediately know why she's doing it. At least I tell myself I know why she's doing it. She's doing it to annoy me, or to get back at me, or to pick on me, or but we create these stories in our heads, and it's amazing how often they are absolutely wrong. So one of the things that we always say is, when you start hearing these stories go off in your head, is to call them out, to say, wait a minute, you have no idea why that person's doing it. Even with the road rage, I have no idea why that guy cut me off. Maybe he's a jerk, but maybe he's rushing to the hospital, or
Mm.
you just don't know. And so if we can kind of at least stop the storytelling, and if we really feel like we have to know, well, then we probably should ask. If why did my wife turn the TV off? Well, I'm going to ask her. It's that sort of
No,
thing.
but Gary, it is. You're right. I mean, we never know what's going on. And by the way, I think we should all assume. Like I do say this. I mean, I've gotten to the point now where I realize that when I see something, I know there's something. There's no one that's going on through life without some difficulty. I
Yeah,
mean, I don't care if you're a billionaire or you have none money. You know, I think in between the spectrum, there's always some sort of drama and trauma going on in mentally or physically to someone, right? If not them, it's their family members. There's
yeah,
something going on. Their kids. So there's always something going on at work. To your point, colleagues. There's more drama at work than you can imagine. So it doesn't matter what you do, it's happening, right? And I always tend to try to give the benefit of the doubt, but sometimes we all are human. We have our threshold, and sometimes you just you just go at it, right? But it's you. The more we think about it, the more we take some accountability, and the more we give some other people the break. I think we live a little less stressed, and I think those are some of the ways. I mean, tomorrow I have my recurring show with Dr. Ham. We do the it's a psychiatry show where we do have live
mhm,
questions, and one thing that he's pretty much repeated over time is that you can only handle the things that you can, the things that you have no control, which, by the way, goes back to what you said. Well, assuming 90% is not you, well, let's just see what you can do for the things you have control over. And that's the thing. We can only control what we can control. Those things you can. Now, one way you can do it is maybe get advanced education, get into a decision making. I don't know. Like even if you're in a corporate, well, the better way to get it is to get to that next level. We can sit at the board or with the board to make some executive decisions. But until then, it's you can voice yourself. There's always a limitation to what you can do, but you do what you can at the time and the level that you're in, and that goes for all life everywhere, right? So, and those are simple changes that we can apply to make a difference in our lives, and eventually we do good by us, we do good by everybody else. And that's a win-win for all, right? So so
exactly.
so Gary, now you worked in a world where death and life, or life and death, is eminent. I mean, it's everyday's story. uh, what is the role of spirituality in your space?
Yeah, they say, first of all, you know the old saying, there are no atheists in foxholes. I'm not sure if there's any atheists going into a really dangerous brain operation. I think all of us are like, if there's someone up there, please give me a little hand here. And I've certainly been in the middle of operations where I'm just saying, really, really, God, can you do something about this? I think, we know that in the burnout world, some level of spirituality is remarkably helpful. It's remarkably strong in supporting and building our resilience. So, if you can be spiritual, if you can find that spirituality within yourself, I think that is, remarkably protective. I personally, I had started out actually when I went to college. I thought I was going to eventually go into the ministry, so I certainly had a very spiritual background from the beginning. I kind of drifted away from organized religion, but I don't know. You're around so much of this stuff. I I don't know, it certainly touched the spiritual side of me. I was just talking about earlier today that through the many years and the thousands of families that patients and their families that I spoke to under the worst circumstances, it never ceased to shock me how, first of all, courageous they were. But also, the only term I've ever been able to come up with to describe it is how filled with grace they were. That's the best way I can call it, is grace. Just just a calmness, a acceptance, a gratitude to us trying to help. It just stunned me how gracious, full of grace, all these patients and all their families were. That was, for me, that was one of the easiest ways to get out of bed in the morning, because I knew that's what I was going to experience in the day. And it would just send chills up and down your spine. And you see that over and over again. And you kind of going, listen, I don't know what the answers are for all things in the universe, but I have to believe that these are special souls here.
Well, thank you. And I love what you said about that. First of all, you're right. No matter what we believe while we are standing and tall, it's one thing. But when the shit hits the fan, as they say, everybody looks for a request, submits a request to see if potentially it gets cashed in. And no matter what denomination or no denomination, people actually tend to believe that there is some level of a response that could happen if I did ask. And so you're right. And when you get to those points, what else can you do, right? I mean, you have the capable hands but you still have, as we always say, from a religious aspect, you say, well, we live in the hands of God, right? And so at the end of the day, now here's the thing. I mean, I personally, I'm still with the organized, version of it, meaning I do believe in the system, but I do believe that, we all know that there is an expiration date. So this is how I look at it for me personally. And it eases a lot of pain, because knowing that it's going to happen, it's just a matter of how and when, right? And so at the end of the day, you do your best. And if people are meant to live, they're going to live, and the surgery will be successful. But if it's not, because I do believe there's more to this than just, the heart stopping and things, there's more to that. But again, from the religious aspect of it, you see it differently. If you have no religion, then you look at it from scientifically. It's one-on-one. It's, if you did this, you're going to do this. You cold plug this, is going to be okay. But if you go beyond the realm of physical and science, and you go into the spiritual world, there's more to this. You believe that there's more. I mean, you probably, maybe you've heard these. I mean, I'm sure you know about them. Near life, near death,
Sure.
opportunities, and people come back. They had these experiences. You hear a lot of these things, right? So, but at the end of the day, that's a whole world in its own. But it does alleviate some of the pressures. I mean, because think about it, right, Doc? If these folks they lose that faith, then basically everybody's to blame, right? They're gonna find a reason to blame, and therefore that's not gonna help you or anyone. So you're right. I mean, we have to be thankful that empathy, that feeling is available at people, and it's abundant, and people have it. That you have one small percentage that may react otherwise, but everybody, no matter what the outcomes are, they accept them eventually, and that's a mercy on its own, for you and for them and for whoever. So it's a different world, but I think, to your point, it's needed. It does help, whether you're doing the function to work or you're actually on the other side. That just is a different, and anyone who has some level of spirituality usually tends to be a lot more accepting, calm, no blame. Because listen, and I believe in that. You do the best you can with the set of things you can, and there's nothing else. I mean, the rest is not in your hands. You cannot do more. You basically drive to the limit, and then the rest is, and we hear this sometimes, like, we've done our best, now it's up to him, to his immune system, his this, his that, or
Hmm.
and sometimes that's what it is. The body is going to have to do its own, and the resilience is there, and eventually they can, people come back from extreme stuff, and you'll be like, well, wow, we didn't expect this outcome, and it can happen faster and sooner, because you don't know. So there is a level of that is unique, and but we love that, because that makes life easier for the practice of medicine, for everybody, right? I mean, it just helps. So thank you for sharing that piece in terms of how you see it, in terms of the people that you've met, and again, people come in this stage to the hospital, and the people that, other than the ones who have a medical condition that is growing that you can resolve, like in surgery that you can pre-plan, the other 90% is all trauma. So it's not something that is pre-planned. It happens, and people are faced with it, and you are the ultimate potential help that they can get, and the rest, I mean, beyond God, if they believe, right? So you are, and then the last line of defense, if you want to call it that way. And it does work, and I know that there's, like, again, there's a satisfaction there, that there is a good feel that you do your best, and you try to save lives, and that's that, nobody can take that away. And I want to say this: people should not blame you, no matter what, because at the end of the day, you are there to do the best you can, and you do it. You don't. It is heavy on you as well. And when I say you and the team, and
Mhm.
everybody that does the job that you do. So that's that. Now let's talk about the novel. You know, that's your latest edition. What's the name
Uh-huh.
of it, by the way?
It's called Death's Pale Flag. Uh,
Ooh, okay.
Death's Pale Flag. It's a quote from Shakespeare, actually, but I think it works well. So it's still in this topic area. It's of all things, it's about a brain surgeon who's a workaholic, and probably stressing his family out already anyway. But he begins to see things, and he originally thinks they're hallucinations. He thinks it's maybe through sleep deprivation, or maybe he's having little seizures or something. But as things go on and he sees more and more of it, he begins to believe he's seeing ghosts, and he's trying to figure out what the ghosts want with him. And then his life starts to unravel, both at work and in his home.
Wow. So that's pretty cool. I mean, that sounds like a movie story. I like that. Maybe that can progress into something, hey, I think there's
I
something there.
I
Well,
always say, I insist Brad Pitt plays my part, but
all right. Why not, right? No, but certainly, I mean, it sounds like a very exciting, but I get it. I mean, but it is, well, it's not fiction, but that is fiction, I guess. It is pure fiction, but it does touch on reality. I mean, these are all, I guess, figurative speech type of, concepts, where it's the ghosts are real. I mean, you do get these vivid things, and then you're questioning things, but there's a mental piece to it. So I know it's a nice, playful, theme there. So I congratulate you for that. So that's pretty cool. Is that just you, or you have a co-writer on, or
No,
co-author?
that was just me. The I and Yeah, I like how you described it. I kind of played with some themes. I wanted originally just to really give a kind of an eyes wide open view of the neurosurgical world. So there's heavy neurosurgery in it, and I try to make it very digestible. But you get double barrel what it's like to be in a big medical center with the helicopters coming in, and the car accidents, and the gunshots, and the tumors, and all that sort of thing. And we address some of the things that we talked about today, making mistakes and how that haunts you. And with the ghost side, I wanted the reader to start trying to decide whether the guy's going crazy or the ghosts were real. And we do get into spirituality and religion in it. So it's been well received so far. So that makes me happy. Hasn't shot up to the number one in the New York Times yet, but we'll see.
Well, listen, it's we just did the trailer right now, so let's see.
There you go.
We will play it. Out there, and I mean, definitely, I'll encourage people to read it. I mean, it is fiction; it's fun, but also it does bring you, like I always say, books and movies. There is what you see, and there's what behind the scene. There's always a message that is behind, or multiple messages are behind, in the context of the script. So, therefore, in this case, it is the life of what a neurosurgeon and brain surgeon is experiencing, and the demons that they have to deal with. Because
Exactly.
that's what it is. I mean, no one's going to know that, and life is difficult, and that's like we hear this, like, for example, you meant talking about military, right? we hear people having trauma, episodes and having these visions, and they have these nightmares. They seeing things. I mean, because you've seen that live. It's not. We can. If I always say this, I remember one small thing that I saw in 30 years plus, and it's always in front of my eyes. Like I've seen someone fall from a car, and their whole arm twisted when the 360. Now that vision did not go away. Like literally
Yeah.
now, if I see someone in that same position, that comes right back. It is a part of trauma, meaning that I was affected by that because it did, plague somewhere. Now I try to ignore it. I've seen, you see the footage right now on TV. Like sometimes,
Yeah.
it's crazy, right? And it stays there behind, so it does trigger once you see something new. But if you always in there, sometimes you get numb. Like in the case of you guys in the hospital, And by the way, this happened. My dad was in the hospital bed, and he actually died, and so
Oh,
I
I'm
went.
sorry.
No, 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 no. Life happens. Remember, I believe. But so he was there. So they called us that he was gone, and so I go there. I walk into the facility. There, he was still in his room. They were just laughing outside. I mean, they're just having a normal, conversation. So I was a little bit like, "What the hell? You got a human that just gone."
Yeah.
But for
Yeah.
them, it's just another day, it's just another Monday. So I realized that they see this enough. To them, it's just like another day, another person. They come in, they go. They would come in live, they go in a bag. I mean, that's kind of like how it is. I try to kind of formalize in my mind to give them again that benefit of doubt to understand where they are. But it was not right to do it in front of the family of
No.
someone who just passed. But so that was my critic to them. But the fact of the matter, I get it. I mean, they see this stuff. I mean, you go to the hospital, people are just having a good, they're just having a normal day. And people are in pain. Oh my God. Like you go to a triage room, everybody's like, oh my God, I this. And the guy's just walking by and like, nothing is happening. It's like it's just a cool day for them. That's because they're so used to it, they're numb to that concept. They just or they're just how they deal with it. They can't be you mentioned empathy. They can't be like, oh, they can be compassionate, they can stuff, but they can't be like, completely like, mushy at every single person that walks in. Otherwise they won't do it. I mean, you go to med school, the first thing they do is you get the cadavers, you get all these,
Right.
you get to see all that stuff. I have actually this true story. A friend of mine, he's a surgeon, but he does like implants, dental implant stuff, so
Hmm.
different surgery, not as advanced as yours. But here's the thing. I remember like we're best friends. I went to my university. He went to his to the dental school, and they do the first like the general medicine first. And so in the first year, the first thing they do, they get the cadavers, and they have to open. And one of his colleagues just fainted. They opened out the body and
Yeah.
she just dropped. And I still remember that as a story that he relayed to me. So that's what happens. I mean, you get wrapped into these things. So eventually, blood, gore, all the stuff. If I see it, I'll probably faint. You're not gonna faint. I mean, you open a brain for God's sakes. You see it. The heart is pumping everything. You have people that actually pump hearts. With their bare hands. I mean, it's amazing. But you get to that point through training, through putting these I guess systems in place that you're not gonna get affected by the light. But anything because you can't. Otherwise, you can't perform. And so that's the difference between someone who has not trained and someone who. So anyway, so this was just my little thing about the ghosts and, and the experiences, because there's definitely reasons for that to happen. So and I appreciate you put it into a novel format and a fictive, fiction format that can make a difference in people's life and make it interesting as well, and bring them closer to the reality of what the work that you guys do out there.
Yeah, and
So
I hope they do. I also wanted to represent what I was talking about, that grace and bravery of the patients and their families. So hopefully they see that. The other piece of it really to me is hopefully it gets across the point that it's all so easily taken away from any of us at any point, life just like that. And maybe if we appreciated it more, more thankful for everything that we have and enjoy what we have, we'd all do a little bit better. So those were some of the targets there. I got to tell you one other quick story, predicated on what you were just saying. I mean, again, we saw the worst stuff nonstop, just one thing after another. And I pretty much sailed through it. I mean, every once in a while you'd feel it in your chest a little bit or something, but I wasn't breaking down and sobbing or not being able to go in because it was too intense or anything like that. I just kind of went and did it because you had to. You had to steel yourself and get it done. And as you pointed out, all your training is designed to do that for you. But it's interesting, since I stopped operating, I I find myself crying over the simplest of things, not because I, dropped a cork on the ground or something, but if I'm watching TV and it's some emotional movie or something, I'm feeling tears rolling down my cheeks and I'm going, what the hell is that? And so my thought about it is, even though we put this facade on and we had it all blocked, it was getting in there.
Oh, it
That
does.
level of tragedy was getting in there.
Well, your resilience is what you develop to
Hmm.
deal with it. But at the end of the day, I mean, again, when you look at combat, soldiers or police,
Hmm.
right? Into the action, at the time of the action, you're not thinking about all that stuff. You just got to deal with it. And you can think about it later. Now, as long as you're in the scene, you're not going to feel anything. You're just going to keep going. And you kind of almost shut down everything else. But once you don't have that, then your true self is still there. You're still a human. You still have those feelings.
Right.
And, I guarantee you, sometimes you reflect and you can remember somebody, laying down on that, bench and you guys doing the work and you might even get emotional. By the way, so that actually leads me to a question. You know, is there a protocol for doctors to go through, like, some sort of um, psychiatry evaluation, or that do have somebody that they can, a therapy concept that is always available to them as they perform surgery? Is that something that is happening? Or if not, is it something that you would think or recommend?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think this the gentleman that I wrote the three nonfiction fiction books with is somebody I partnered with on all this, and he's a world expert on burnout, and his name's Wayne Sotil. But he was banging the drum about burnout 30 years ago, and burnout in medicine, particularly. And, it just wasn't getting heard. And in the last 10 years, it really took off. So there's a lot of everybody's doing burnout this, burnout that, 50%, 70% are burned out. It's all you hear. And in fact, there's all sorts of rules that are being instilled in these residency training programs now. They all have to have some sort of resilience program and all. But the problem is it's often dealt with cynically, where not much is done about it. Or I joke, but once a year they'll bring in a bunch of puppies for people to pet and say, "Here, you've had your resilience training." But so what you see is certain systems have embraced it and are really going at it, and certain systems aren't. The system I was working in, it allowed me to bring this psychologist in and work with our team and work on kind of almost experimenting on this for a few years. And they do have built-in counselors that anybody has access to and all. And even there, it's not enough, in that I think with the resilience angle, one visit to a psychologist, one lecture from somebody like me, one episode of petting the puppies ain't gonna do it. These things that we talk about in the books, the exercises that we do and stuff, it's got to be something that you build into your routine, just like exercise. To keep your body healthy, you got to keep your brain and your psyche healthy as well. And so it needs to be done with regularity, and I think we're far away from that at this point. So the psychologists are kind of there in case the wheels come off, but it would be nice not to have the wheels come off at all.
Well, yeah, I mean, to me personally, if I had it my way, every system must. It's like, You have a police, right? Like law
Yeah.
enforcement, they do have their own therapy, available to them at all times whenever they expose to stuff. There should be someone that's always on staff. I mean, it's just like another service, but now you don't service patients, you service your first patients or your first clients who are your providers, your employees, your doctors, the ones that do the work. I think that's just, and I would even literally, if I had it my way, I would mandate it that it would be like you have a break, you go to the gym. You get like, half hour, treadmill or bike or elliptical, whatever you want to do. But there's got to be something there that's always that kind of offsets that because you got to get that out and get that energy. And so
Yeah.
that's how I see it. I mean, these things should be just basic, level access to all the people. And by the way, not just in the medical world, in any
No.
intense level, you should have these things available. So, because at the end of the day, you want to have performers do the best performance they can. And if you give them the tools to do it, mental and physical aspects of it will help, do the stuff. They're excellent in what they do. But these things are things to be, like to your point, preventative measures versus like it's too late if the wheels come off.
Right.
I mean, you may not be able to resume your work, but if we are preventing this ongoing, as long as you're working, you're ahead of the game. And so that's a whole different aspect of things. Again, who am I? I'm just hurricane, but this is what we do these talks is to bring it out. Hopefully the ears out there can get it and maybe they take, heed to it. Someone can say, hey, listen, I love that concept. Maybe use it. Like I said, you and I can only do so much, but we're doing enough by sharing this value to people. And by the way, we're talking just in the States for the most part. I mean, you know, this world, I mean, we're
Yeah.
way advanced in a lot of it than other places, And by the way, there's other places that I would say they're even more advanced than us. Believe it or not, we can talk about the healthcare system. That's a whole different discussion. I'm sure as a provider, as a doctor and an expert in this, you have these discussions all the time between the insurance, between the government, between all this stuff, the way it all operates here, the access, who gets what, I mean, some hospitals, people may not get the surgery because of whatever, but in other places, people don't even get basic care, you
Yeah.
know, and then the providers are extremely, overwhelmed and they can't get anything. I mean, so we're kind of, a little bit spoiled in a way, but we're talking about this at this level. And, there are people like, what are you guys talking about? Like, step down a minute. We're having none of the stuff you talk about. But so we are conscious of this, and that's why I bring it up. I mean, obviously, these are examples of where we are in terms of, I mean, you are literally, I mean, I'm looking at one of the best in the world here. So, folks, you're listening and watching someone that is the top of the top in their field of expertise and in one of the better institutions of the world. But even, what we're taking here is the value that this is can be applied across the globe as a whole. And anyone watching and listening can take benefits from this discussion and hopefully take it and apply it in your worlds, and whatever you are, you can do these things to advance and to help. I mean, certainly you want your population healthier, you want your people to be, better, you want your doctors to be, taken care of as well, because they can take care of people. And by the way, not just in brain surgery, in all different levels. So that was just my little rant there. So thank you for
No, I
bringing it up.
100% agree. And if you just think about it, if you just want to be, Machiavellian about it, the end justifies the means. I think, if you can keep your performers at peak, you're going to have more, you're going to have better results. You're going to have greater throughput and all that, even if it means you take a few hours a week and let them exercise or let them get some fresh air or let them, whatever it is that helps them perform at their best.
Well, again, I'm going to give you an example, which is unrelated but almost the same, and I'll tell you why. So I've been in an insurance space, but more in the sales leadership. Now, sales is all about numbers and performance, and it's daily. I mean, you're performing surgeries, and my teams are performing daily to provide the insurance for people. And in my world is the Medicare space, so we work with the seniors, and I can tell you, even in the sales world, you don't want to, we want numbers every day. But do you just keep the people out there, or you want to bring them for training and refresh it and take them out there and do some motivational, outings and things like that? You do that. You sacrifice a day, but you take them out. So you want them to be at optimum, performance. You don't just like burn them out, just sell, 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 sell,
Right.
sell. You want to do things, whether your managers or your staff, you do celebrations, you do, awards. You want to get them pumped, and give them breaks. So yes, bring them in, train, retrain. That's the other thing. Training and retraining is important. Sometimes they got it. No, Nobody's got it 100%.
Right.
We got to keep polishing, our skills no matter what we do out there. That's why we have continuing education. You have always renewed, you have articles and journals that come out of medicine that you have to be like part of and understand what's the new technology, the new science, the new medicine. It's the same thing everywhere. But the concept, you sacrifice a day, you get better results later. You don't sacrifice a day, you're going to sacrifice many days later because you're not going to get the performance. So again, I mean, it was an analogy that may not be as high to the level where you are, but it goes to all businesses. I mean, the top executives and CEOs of top companies, they recognize that. I mean, one of the examples is the what they use now as unlimited PTO as an example.
Hmm.
Now, it's proven that the companies that adopted these strategy where people can work based on performance, but they can have enough time themselves, and as long as they deliver, nobody cares. It changed the dynamics of the performance, and these companies are like they're all over the place. They're gone further out than most of the companies that still stick to like you get 2 weeks or whatever, and you can go. You got to get supervisor approval. It just changed the dynamics of how you do it. At the end of the day, what is it? Do you want performance and results, or you want to have dictatorship and
Yeah,
policy adherence,
control,
control?
right?
Exactly. So I mean, that's all there is. It's a lifestyle. It's a leadership change and a shift from old school mentality to contemporary or futuristic way of thinking. It will make a different world for all of us for everything that we do. And so again, doctor, I mean, this has been an an awesome discussion. I mean, I'm enjoying every single moment, and again, I am
Oh, me too.
honored. I'm honored to be in your presence, and the work you do is the work you've done and the work you do today, because you're still teaching the next generation of med and undergrads, in the university, and these are all the people that are actually going to be the next, providers out there. So, your work is tremendous, and the more we put out this information, it's going to change them. And I think the students themselves, they're going to learn, and they're going to be able to potentially champion some of this discussion or some of the topics that you're covering, into their new world, whatever they're going to be going, hospitals. Some of these may be the next brain surgeons as well. Some of them may be the next CEOs or executives in
Yeah.
some of these healthcare systems, and therefore they can bring these ideologies and make the shift and change from the old to the new. Well, we've exceeded our hour. It went by quick, but who cares, right? It was worth every
Right.
single minute and second of it. So, Gary, can you just leave our audiences with some piece of advice, whether they're in the medical field or otherwise?
Yeah, I go back to one of the main thrusts, and that is you really can't take care of anybody else in medicine or in your family or at your work or anything. You can't do anything at your best if you're not functioning well. And so it is absolutely imperative to look after yourself, to understand yourself, and to take care of yourself. So we have a mantra that is basically no guilt for self-compassion and self-care. You just can't let guilt get into it because we're very prone to that. And just say, no, I'm going to take care of myself first, and then I'll be able to take care of other people. It's like if those oxygen masks drop down on a plane and they say, if you have a kid by you, don't be there fiddling with the kid. Get your mask on first, then you'll be able to take care of the kid.
Well, thank you, Gary. And it's funny because you said it just I was gonna say exactly the same thing about the example of the plane. It's a very standard, but it is, if you take care of yourself, you can do more. If yourself is not there, you're not gonna be able to provide, the right, outcomes out there. So it is no, so Gary, the website, I know you have a website, and people can actually go in there and there's some resources and links to everything that we talked about. So I will have the link of it in the description of the show so people can actually connect with you direct and definitely now the
Yes.
books are available on Amazon, I'm assuming, and
Yeah,
or
all the typical online providers, all the books are available. I also I have a bunch of blog articles on Psychology Today and stuff on my own website and stuff. So anybody who wants to get into that stuff with me, I invite them to contact me. They can contact me pretty directly, and if they ever want to shoot the breeze about this stuff, we're only scratching the surface here, Hurricane. We went through a lot of minutes, and there's still so much that we could be getting into.
Well, listen, we got to do what we can with what we have, right?
Right.
We make the best that we can today, and hopefully this will just basically, you know, I guess multiply through other people's, I guess reach and venues because everybody that's watching this can share this through their personal feeds and hopefully spread the word across and more people link up to you, and that's how we do it. It's information, and you are a resource that people can actually tap into and get direct from the source. And it's always good also to get it from the best and the best of the best because you are an expert in what you do. I mean, people are not gonna doubt your qualifications because they can't, even if they wanted to. You know your stuff. You've done this work long enough to understand it better than most, and you are helping people one person at a time. So Gary, Dr. Simmons, thank you so much for being with us today.
Oh, thank you so much. It's been a delight, truly.
It's an honor, privilege. I mean, all those qualifiers and attributes, I would add them here. I'm gonna run out of vocabulary here, because again, like I said, I'm just enjoying the discussion. I've enjoyed it, and I know, it's funny. I listen to these shows over and over, so I will actually reabsorb it, once we're done, because so much stuff that you covered there. My attention span gets limited when I'm trying to come back with you in
Yeah.
discussion. It's different when I listen to you just without any thought process going on at the same time. But so thank you so much, and please keep up the great work you're doing out there. And yeah, you're a friend of the network, and maybe we'll have you back again. We can talk about more stuff, in the future as well. And as you maybe another book, and I do want to see that this book, in the movie somehow to just bring it to people. You never
Well, we'll
know.
see. We'll see how it goes. But yeah, no, thanks so much. Anytime, I'd love to talk to you more.
Well, I'll hold you to that. So we'll connect after the show, and then we'll plan maybe something for the next year. But so thank you so much for being with us. And folks, I hope you had a great time with us. You've enjoyed the discussion as well. You've learned quite a bit. And yeah, that's about it for today. And we'll be talking soon. New day, new show, new topic, and new guest. Bye for now.